Hey guys, it's your boy Chad White, host of News Time and musical genius extraordinaire. This week's episode of News Time is talking about how musical artists like to drop brand new albums without any notice. And we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about my brand new album. It's a new hip hop, jazz, fusion, rock album, and you'll love it. And you know what? At the end of this episode of News Time, you're going to listen to it. So stay tuned and enjoy this week's episode of News Time.
It's News Time. Delivering to you the news you didn't know about, the news you didn't care about, and the news you didn't know you cared about. With host, Chad White. Now, here's that host, Chad White.
If you thought I wouldn't do 2 music-themed episodes in a row, you'd be right. But I needed a story, and I just haven't covered this exact topic yet. Welcome back to News Time. I'm your host, Chad White, and this is the surprise! My new album is coming out in a few hours. News that you didn't know about. So picture this. You wake up on a Friday morning and scroll through the latest album releases to find that an artist that you like has released an album to the world. This is the scene almost every few months now, with some of the biggest acts are utilizing the technique because, well, we don't exactly know why. No one does. Here we have a whole host of possibilities, though. Maybe it's to control the narrative, or maybe they just want to surprise everyone with the lovely gift of their music, or they can make more money by generating buzz with the drop. Probably a mixture of all 3, really. Again, we don't know. This past weekend saw the release of a surprise album from Eminem, of all people, following last year's less than stellar revival. This new one, Kamikaze, is the older M doing what he does best, taking shots at other rappers, awards, and critics. Now with more slurs. Plus, there's a song from the Venom movie, which I don't know exactly how to think about that one, but M's back and pulling a Beyonce. Speaking of which, you'll recall that the songstress pulled this same move 3 times even, starting with her 2013 self-titled album Beyonce, then Lemonade, and ending with the most recent release, that is Everything Is Love, with her husband Sean Carter, or Jay-Z. All released with several music videos. Usually an outlet and its critics will receive advanced copies of whatever the album is, but bigger acts tend to, more recently, skirt this tradition. U2's Songs of Innocence, most drastically, was dropped onto everyone's iTunes, and they were blamed for it when it was Apple's fault. And truly yours, because you left automatic downloads on, you dummies. Drake's, if you're reading this, It's Too Late, was dropped as a suspected way for the rapper to get out of his Young Money contract. Even Kanye's latest set of songs were tweaked just hours before being posted online. Just like he did for the other 2 albums. Melina Delkic of the New York Times writes about how the publication typically covers albums. Speaking with pop music editor Joe Coscarelli, he gives an outline as to how music goes from digital to disc for the reviewers. Essentially, our artists give the songs to the labels, who in turn send those to a CD plant to be packed for distribution in a few weeks. Reviewers would get a set of songs weeks, maybe months ahead of time after the fact, and that's usually how it works. But now artists, Delkic writes, get rid of the middlemen. For what? To avoid leaks? To control promotion? A combination of the two? While some critics enjoy, or at least tolerate, a surprise drop, there are those that could do without the event in its entirety. GQ's Dorian Lynskey wrote a not-so-subtle argument against why doing it this way. Look at James Blake's The Color in Anything. It dropped in early May, clocked in at 76 minutes, and featured lyrics and promotion from Frank Ocean, Justin Vernon, and Rick Rubin. Yet no one, Lynskey writes, remembers it because of the internet's short attention span and unwillingness to stick with an unconventional album. Or what about when, early on, many of these albums were exclusives? Drake, Frank Ocean, U2, all were susceptible to Apple's rich trappings. Beyonce even. You can't even stream Lemonade or Beyonce outside of Tidal. The Guardian contributor Iman Ford suggests there are two other reasons outside of spinning the narrative for the rise of surprise releases: beating piracy and making yourself stand out from the other albums coming out soon. The internet has introduced us to an easier platform for which to deliver music. Without anyone to tell them what to do, an artist can go straight from GarageBand to USB drive to iTunes in a matter of hours, only to see a true result shortly thereafter. It's fascinating. Further, they can add more songs into the catalog because streaming is a thing and someone has to count up those into full albums. That's why Billboard changed the way charting for streaming works, both free and paid. And you can actually see me talk about this in last week's episode about charts. Charts. What is this? An episode of Who Charted? Well, it is time to get the party started. It's an inside joke for nobody. There can be obstacles in the way of publishing, though. This is when surprise releases are no different than their pre-announced brethren. Ford writes about how digital tracks in particular can be slowed down in the process. There are 3 separate rights that any company or person can own for one single song: composition, performing, and the master. If no combination of the parties can come to a conclusion on how to submit a project, then said project won't be released. Surprise albums are so popular now that even the elder statesmen, that is the Grammys, believe them to be the new standard. In fact, we all believe them to be the new standard. I'm surprised, actually, whenever anyone announces an album with ample time to advertise it. Whenever music is released, though, I've always welcomed it. No matter the artist, we're lucky to live in a time in which we can tap away on our phones and have 99% of all music made ever downloaded. And all for $10, no less. Just because an artist puts out a project with no fanfare doesn't mean they spent any less time on it. Even Migos and their quality control spent some amount of time on that 30-track album they dropped. Yeah, it was about 45 minutes per song, but they spent time doing it. Before I go, I want to talk to you about a very funny podcast available on Stitcher Premium or wherever you get your podcasts. Gossip. Gossip is like if Desperate Housewives and Sex and the City were in podcast form, says The Guardian, and they're not wrong. Allison Raskin created the show and stars in it alongside Victoria Rawell and Amanda Perez. Each week, the 3 meet at the Golden Cup Coffee Corner to drink coffee and share the latest gossip floating around their not-so-traditional suburban town, Golden Acres. You can listen to all 12 episodes of the first season of Gossip right now on any podcasting service for free. Check out Gossip today. And that's all the news I have for you for this week on News Time. Why don't you subscribe and check out one of our other videos? I had to look at myself with the monitor. You can follow us on Twitter at Sleepless Comedy. Follow me on Twitter at ChadBlackWhite. Like us on Facebook. Listen to the Constitutionals podcast. Head to the website, sleeplesscomedy.com, because I forgot to say that. And I'm going to drop my album in about 3, 2, 1. Oh, crap. I got caught up in licensing issues.